You're listening to a Mamamia podcast.
Mamamia acknowledges the traditional owners of land and waters that this podcast is recorded on. Hello and welcome to Mamamia Out Loud. It's what women are actually talking about on Monday, the 20th of May. I'm Holly Wainwright.
I'm Mia Freedman.
And I'm Jessie Stevens, and I'm recording remotely today with a sick child. I apologise for any potential audio issues. The show must go on. The show will go on.
On today's show, the video that immediately shut down a very famous man's defence. Also, are we ready for another Bennifer split? Ben and J-Lo are on divorce watch. And Trump, ScoMo, and a very viral commencement speech. The Christian men who say they're at the bottom of a pylon. But first, Mia.
In case you missed it, this is truly important news because anti-sex beds have been installed inside athletes' villages for the Paris Olympics after athletes from previous games have admitted to kinky orgies.
What's wrong with a kinky orgy? We're all adults here. What is an anti-sex bed? What does it look like?
I'm so glad you asked. Well, the beds are made out of cardboard with the frames and mattresses completely recyclable. Now, this is so that they can be more sustainable. However, some people have claimed that these beds are actually anti-sex beds because they're single-framed and they're not very sturdy. However,
do they know that healthy, fit young people can have sex in other places than beds?
I'm so glad you said that, particularly standing up, which is a challenging sex position for many of us, but not if you're an Olympic athlete. There are so many tales from previous games of wild sex stories, which include an alleged orgy in a hot tub one year and former US footballer Hope Solo claiming that she saw people having sex right out in the open on the grass between buildings.
To be a fly on the wall, I would love it. I mean, they've got so much energy, so much adrenaline.
They do.
Their bodies are so fit. I love the idea that you're going to stop them from having sex because of that bed. I think they'll just have sex on the floor.
They're back in a big way because for the Tokyo Games in 2021, there was an intimacy ban installed to prevent COVID. You may remember that. But it's been lifted this year, thank God. And a whopping 300,000 condoms will be supplied for the 9,000 athletes in Paris. And if you can do some quick maths, that means everybody gets 2 per day throughout the games, which runs from July 26 to August 11.
Oh, I feel tired at the very thought of it.
That sounds like a challenge. Over the weekend, CNN released surveillance footage of American rapper and record producer Sean Combs, also known as P. Diddy, violently assaulting his then-girlfriend Cassandra Ventura in 2016. We see Ventura walking through a hotel corridor in LA, barefoot, holding bags before Combs runs to pursue her. He grabs her and violently throws her to the ground, kicks her, seizes her, and then attempts to drag her along the floor back to their room. She pushes him off. He appears to then take her bag, and then Ventura finds a phone and presumably attempts to call for help. Moments later, he is seen throwing an object, which is understood to be a vase, in her direction. We'll come back to the video, which is utterly shocking, and Combs seems more concerned with holding his towel up than violently attacking his then-girlfriend. But I want to contextualise the significance of this video. In 2023, so last year, Ventura filed a lawsuit against Combs alleging that he subjected her to a cycle of abuse, violence and sex trafficking over 10 years. His attorney denied these allegations and they were settled outside of court. But in the days following and the weeks following, various other allegations were made. Important to note, these are far from the only allegations brought against Diddy. It would take hours, literally hours, to provide a comprehensive list. But these, at the end of 2023, ranged from sexual assault to image-based abuse to rape. In response, Combs said, "Let me be clear. I did not do any of the awful things being alleged. I will fight for my name, my family, and my truth." He has also said, "Sickening allegations have been made against me by individuals looking for a quick payday." Combs, who is now 54, has since issued a statement on Instagram. Here is what he said.
It's so difficult to reflect on the darkest times in your life. But sometimes you got to do that. I was fucked up. I hit rock bottom, but I make no excuses. My behavior on that video is inexcusable. I take full responsibility for my actions in that video. I'm disgusted. I was disgusted then when I did it. I'm disgusted now. I went and I sought out professional help. I had to go into therapy, go into rehab. Had to ask God for his mercy and grace. I'm so sorry. But I'm committed to be a better man each and every day. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm truly sorry.
The darkest times in his life. I can't even find the words watching that apology. I mean, what kind of rehab do you have to go to learn not to assault someone that you're meant to love? I don't think that he needs to go to rehab. He needs to go to bloody jail. And why isn't he in jail?
I think if you're wondering as well if we've edited that video to edit out the part where he says Cassandra's name or apologises to her, just to be clear, that was never said. That was the entirety of the apology. And look, we're going to go back to that apology. I want to go to the initial video because in Ventura's lawsuit, she alleged that Combs paid the hotel over $70,000 to remove the security footage. Holly, has this vision changed everything?
100% it has. Because the thing about that apology, if we can call it such a thing, is that we may have a modicum of understanding for somebody to say, I was in a terrible time in my life, all of those things. If he hadn't been denying that this even happened and calling her and all of the other people who are bringing these cases against him money-grabbing liars right up until the minute that video broke on the internet on the weekend. Because people would probably also know that his home was raided recently. Although no formal charges have yet been laid around that, broadly speaking, this is also thought to be part of this sex trafficking idea. For a very long time, all of the celebrities around Diddy have spoken about the debauchery that followed that world around, particularly in the noughties and onwards. This is not some kind of brain explosion incident. It's part of a culture. It's part of a culture of abusing women and treating them like trash and things to be traded and abused. Some of the accusations from Ventura, which obviously, given that footage now are being seen in a light that they should have been seen in all along, are horrifying. They're saying that all the time she tried to escape, the tentacles of his power and influence, the companies he owns, the number of people on his payroll would find her, track her down, bring her back. That she developed a serious drug addiction to cope with some of the horror that she had.
She was 19 when they met. She was a singer that was signed to his label and he was 37. And they were together still for 2 years after this. I mean, it is just so distressing.
But the thing that's interesting to me is about the video, right? Why it takes that video, for him to have, he cannot deny it. There is no plausible deniability, but also for us to really believe and take these kind of accusations against a powerful man seriously. It made me reflect on, and I don't want to compare the two, but there's a small comparison here, right? I've read the allegations against Brad Pitt that Angelina Jolie has put forward several times about what happened on a private jet between them in the last days of their marriage. In the court records, she has always said that he grabbed her by the head, that he shook her, he threw her into a wall, he pushed her into a bathroom wall, he choked one of the children, he threw drinks over them, he shoved her into seats, injuring her back and her elbow. And I've read those things lots of times and kind of gone, oh, maybe it's true. You know, I mean, obviously I do believe it's true, but if there was video of that incident, imagine how differently we would feel about Brad Pitt. Imagine how differently we would feel about any of these allegations that bubble up against very powerful men, how much we offer the benefit of the doubt, how much we like to believe that the women might be lying until it is right in front of us. We see the bruises, we see the cuts, we see the footage of it happening, and then finally we go, oh, maybe she was telling the truth. It's crazy.
And the words that he said at the time and has said since, and in fact are still pinned on his Twitter profile. If you go and have a look, he still has it pinned. People are trying to assassinate his character and I did not do any of the awful things alleged. Still sitting there. And the brazenness of his denying all of these allegations, the confidence that he would never be found out. That language is so familiar. And when you hear people speak like that, you think it starts making you kind of question your grasp on reality. But for him to have that narrative out there and then for that to be contrasted with the video we saw, I was thinking about how it's obviously innocent until proven guilty. And this is something that we talk about applying in, and, you know, it has to in order for our justice system to prevail. But in order for us to believe that it's innocent until proven guilty, we're not believing in the innocence of the
100%.
alleged victim. Yeah. We're kind of believing
in the assumed guilt of the victim. Yeah.
You can't believe in both of their innocence at once, really. So what we do is we cast such doubt on what that woman experienced, and to think that she then brought it to court, was basically accused of being a money grabber. And the other part of this is that someone somewhere sat on this video for 8 years.
Not just someone somewhere, Jessie. A lot of people sat on this video, and a lot of people, Diddy has been spending an enormous amount of money for a very long time to try and push away all of, because the accusations against him, the sexual assault accusations, go all the way back to 1991. As you said before, it would take hours for us to read it. And yet, you know, in the noughties, he was the hottest celebrity. He threw these parties, these white parties that were the ticket that everybody wanted, and everybody was part of that world. And not just one person sat on that, but a lot. And you've hit the nail on the head there, that it's not necessarily the confidence that people would believe him. But when you are a powerful, rich and successful man, the confidence that no one would believe a woman, a lowly woman, in her claims against you is what gives so many perpetrators their confidence. And I have to say, right, in the last few weeks when violence against women has become a real mainstream part of our conversation, I've felt this turn in the last couple of weeks, and I've read opinion pieces and I've listened to podcasts from men suggesting that women are overblowing this issue, that we're feeling too sensitive about it. We are exaggerating how we feel about that, right? And the thing is that everybody who's seen that video is horrified, but it's also intensely distressing for any woman, and there are many of them who've lived through something similar. Last week in New South Wales, the police went on a sort of blitz to go and pick up a lot of known domestic violence abusers because of all this attention, and the Minns government in New South Wales is like, right, we're going to take it seriously. Some journalists went along with them. In 3 days, right, just in one state, in very particular places, they picked up 548 offenders who they classified as dangerous. They laid more than 1,000 charges. They conducted more than 1,000 bail compliance checks, and they caught nearly 150 breaches of them. This is a real issue that so many women are living with, and yet we still keep getting told that it's not a big deal, that we're not believed, or that it's nonsense. And it's just sickening.
Back on Diddy for a second as well, I went and I was looking at his profile over the weekend before this video was posted. I mean, the spin is just sickening. He's got 7 kids with 4 women, and, you know, over Mother's Day last week, there's this series of weird posts where he says all these lovely things about all the different mothers of his children. Like, each of them get their own posts. And he had his 7th child as recently as 2022 with a woman called Dana Tran. One of the mothers of his children, his ex-partner Kim Porter, actually died in 2018. You can only wonder what stories those women have to tell. Cassie, it must be said, she, after filing the civil suit, after he denied it, it was settled the next day, and she has an NDA. Her husband does not, and he released a statement basically not naming Diddy but saying any man who hits a woman is not a man, and now you can't hide anymore, and the people who protect abusers are not men either. She's gone on to have a couple of children, and you can only imagine how she must be feeling. What was very distressing to me as well, if you read some of the comments under his video, so many of them are like, we can't judge, and the only people you need to apologise to are God. Like, there's a lot of people, because he used the word God, a lot of people are using that as a way back in to forgive him, you know, because it's very hard to argue with that. If someone says, oh, I'm okay with God. What's interesting is to know what's going to happen next. I think this is just the next chapter in this story. There's a lot to come. As you said, whole FBI raided his house. I think there are going to be sex trafficking charges. There are going to be a lot of charges. I think he is going to go to jail for a really long time. It can't come soon enough.
a lot of people have said as well, this isn't the only piece of evidence. Ventura alleges that a tape where she was sexually assaulted, a tape exists of that. So what's shifted, this video being published 8 years later, isn't because someone went, oh, I think the world needs to see this. It's because of a shift of power. Like P. Diddy 8 years ago, even among all of those allegations, this was pre the Me Too movement. This was pre-Jeffrey Epstein. He was someone who held power. I think the context as well that he is one of the most powerful people in the music industry who found and helped Usher become famous. Like some of the biggest names, he was behind them. That gives you a sense of his power. What's happened is these civil lawsuits have happened. We've got the alleged sex trafficking. We've got all of these things and his power is eroding. And so now this comes through. And you'll notice that there is no one high profile really defending him. For someone who is very well connected, I think at this point everyone steps back and goes,
how can you defend that?
Well, now I'll
the
stand
ripples
for
will be
something.
interesting, right? Because he has a lot of famous friends. He has a lot of people associated with him. And I imagine that lawyers' phones will be ringing very hot across America today.
If you are someone who has experienced or is experiencing domestic violence, this video, as well as the news cycle recently, must be incredibly confronting. And if you need anyone to speak to, then please call 1-800-RESPECT. The resources will be in our show notes.
Mamamia out loud!
Days apart are being counted. Ring fingers are being zoomed in on and residences are being monitored like this is 2002. Yes, Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez are on divorce watch. Is this one of the least important stories of the day? Yes. Is it none of our business where Ben Affleck slept last night? Also, yes. And is everyone in my DMs asking me whether I think they're splitting up? Yes, yes, yes. So let's examine how we got here and what causes a tabloid divorce watch to be officially activated. It's like a button is pushed.
Yeah.
It's like no one's talking about it and then suddenly everybody's talking about it. So let's examine some of the evidence and see what we think. Exhibit 1 in the J-Lo and Ben are they splitting up situation. Protesting too much. Who remembers This Is Me Now. The greatest love story ever told. Yes, that. Never told. Sorry, of course.
Except it was told.
It feels like a hot minute since we watched J-Lo's, what was that? What do we still don't know what to call it?
Know. It was just a
Visual
glorious
album,
orgy of love.
Movie, miniseries, who frickin' knows? All about how her turbulent time in getting married several times, splitting up several times, had led her back to her one true love, Ben. And anyone who watched that would know that Ben had mixed feelings about being included in this narrative.
He did.
He really did.
He was broadly supportive, but the part where he came home one day and she was with all these strangers in their house, looking through, when they got back together after their breakup, he'd written her this book of every letter that they'd ever sent to each other and all these beautiful things. And she was passing it around, all these people that she wanted to work on the album with. And he was a little taken aback by that.
He was a bit like, oh, all these strangers in my house reading my love letters. Great. Exhibit 2, a very prominent solo red carpet. So the Met Gala, as we know, last week, notable not only for its successes, but for the distinct lack of what we've come to know as sad Ben content, which is that at an awards show or an event where he's there with J-Lo, he sits at the table looking like he'd rather be anywhere else in the universe.
Because they have very different approaches to fame, don't they?
They do.
When I say she loves it, they don't mean in any way for that to sound derogatory. She is almost the best celebrity we have in that she doesn't explain, doesn't complain, just genuinely seems to feed off being that, whereas he doesn't.
And she was one of the chairs of the Met Gala, and so it was a big night for her, and he didn't go. So that started people counting, which brings us to Exhibit 3. No pictures of them together for 47 days. Now, I don't know if there have been any pictures of Brent and I together in the last 47 days. Actually, I do. He came to support me at my very important work function
There you go.
last Thursday. But then Brent is not shooting the action movie The Accountant 2 in Los Angeles at the moment. That brings us to Exhibit 4, which as a result of the no pictures for 47 days, a very prominent pap walk plus children. So on the 48th day, photos.
On the 48th day, they were photographed.
Yes. One of Ben's kids with Jennifer Garner had a school play. And the paparazzi were there, which is not cool. And we have to all make sure we say that.
It's not cool.
It's not cool to have paparazzi photographers outside kids' high schools. But
Someone may have alerted the paparazzi.
But someone may have. You know, this is why Mamamia does not publish pap pictures, is it's not cool. But anyway, everybody looked at them. He and J-Lo arrived at the school separately, both holding flowers separately, were photographed smiling and being polite. And then Ben drove J-Lo home, and then he drove back to his place in Brentwood because just to really bring in why everyone's excited about this, it's this living apart situation. Jennifer and Ben have a massive $60 million mansion in Beverly Hills.
They just bought it quite recently, didn't they?
It's new, but they've both been seen house hunting. And Ben has been staying at a place in Brentwood, which my celebrity sleuthing confirms is a 17-minute drive away from the mansion in Beverly Hills.
Oh, it's done.
So
It's
he
over.
dropped her home, Beverly Hills, and he kept driving to Brentwood, which doesn't sound as fancy as Beverly Hills, but I'm sure it is. And then he went to bed.
So, you know how lawyers, sometimes they wait till last to really present the clincher? You've missed the clincher, Holly Wainwright. I can't
buried
believe
the lead.
I know more about this than you. But this, to me, is the most conclusive evidence that these two people are not together anymore. Last week, Jennifer Lopez was on Instagram and she liked a post by an account called Your Courageous Comeback. And the post read, "You cannot build a healthy relationship with someone who lacks integrity and emotional safety. You can't build a relationship with someone who is disconnected from themselves. We can't expect someone to see us when we can't even see themselves." That doesn't even make sense. But it went on. Everyone noticed. Everyone started writing articles about it. Then she unliked it. But that, to me, is the behavior of someone who has just come out of a relationship and can't help but engage.
She's been listening to Taylor Swift's
Yeah,
Tortured
I
Poets
think so.
Department.
She definitely has
repeat.
on repeat. So here are my questions about this because as I stated at the beginning, it is none of our business. Why do we care so much and why are we surprised if this is true?
It's not our fault that we care. We care against our will because this is so much history repeating itself. If you recall Jenny from the Block, that iconic video that featured both of them, it was meant to be sort of satire about the paparazzi, but it was really playing into that idea of Bennifer. They were the biggest celebrity couple. It was the first time a couple had that, is it called a portmanteau? The combination of the names. They were a professional celebrity couple. Not since Posh and Becks really has there been one of those. And they really played into it, and you could see that J-Lo enjoyed it, Ben didn't, because they've got very different vibes. Like Ben is, I don't want to say he's more
won an
cred.
Oscar.
Exactly. And J-Lo is quite serious, earnest. She's earnest about love. She's earnest about fame. She's just quite earnest. And we saw that in her documentaries. And I think it all became too much and they broke up. They got back together again. And what did she do? Instead of actually, I sound like I'm blaming her for this, but instead of actually learning from that, she then took the whole thing public again. And when you take something that's quite fragile, like love, and you turn it into a product, she literally turned it into a movie, an album, a tour, which didn't sell well. You can't be surprised that that's going to have an effect on the real thing.
But because I sat through This Is Me Now,
yeah,
I am very invested in J-Lo's happy ending. She has been chasing love forever, right? We saw that in that musical. Let's call it a musical. We see her going through several relationships, some
It's
of
a
which
masterpiece.
are difficult and abusive. And given what we were just discussing about P. Diddy, who she did date very famously back in the noughties, who knows what shit she's been through. And then we watched her with her zodiacal council, all telling her like, love yourself and then love will follow and all those things. And her narrative is, and that's what brought me back to Ben. And so if they've now broken up because he's a miserable git who gets upset that she's too sparkly for him, then I'm Team J-Lo. And you should ride off into the sunset on your magical unicorn, my friend.
I'm not Team anyone because I am above all this, although I know all the information and have spent exactly the same time looking at it.
You clearly know more than I do.
The Greatest Love Story Never Told, the documentary, in that Affleck said, when Jen and I broke up before, the catalyst for that was the amount of scrutiny around our private life. And then he said that when they got back together, he said, listen, one of the things I don't want is a relationship on social media. So I think that looking at what he told us and looking at how the boundaries he wanted to keep up haven't been sustained.
I don't think that's fair to blame him.
But he's complicit. Like, I'm sorry, but I've seen all those paparazzi images. Just remember when they got married and then they went on honeymoon to Paris or whatever and they're making out on a park bench and they're like, he's complicit. I think the thing with Ben Affleck
but that's because he was horny.
And again, I know that I'm massively projecting into people's lives that I know zero about in reality, is he's tortured, no question. He's one of the kind of men that Taylor Swift writes her songs about. He's battled with addiction and depression and he's up and he's down and he's tortured and he's doing what he wants to do. So sometimes he clearly loves being part of J-Lo's world and sometimes he doesn't. And that must be very confusing for J-Lo, who knows what she wants. She wants love and diamonds and rainbows and sparkly things.
I learned the hard way. Not all love stories have a happy ending.
Do you want daily Out Loud access? Why wouldn't you? We drop episodes every Tuesday and Thursday exclusively for Mamamia subscribers. Follow the link in the show notes to get us in your ears 5 days a week. And a huge thank you if you're already a subscriber. Apparently, God has had a busy week. Because in addition to being asked to forgive P. Diddy for violently assaulting his girlfriend for years, he's also been co-opted by some men who believe God's wish is for women to ditch their careers to be wives and mothers and for Trump to become president again. Ugh. Where to begin? Well, in case you missed it, Harrison Butker is a player for the Chiefs. We spoke about this at our live show, but it is an NFL team that Taylor Swift's boyfriend Travis Kelce plays for. And it's graduation time in the US right now, which means that a lot of notable figures are being invited to give commencement speeches at graduation ceremonies. And one of them was Harrison Butker. He's 28 years old and he's kind of a big deal. And he was asked to give the commencement speech at Benedictine College last week. Now, it was not well received by the internet. Apparently he received a standing ovation in the room. But the part that has gone viral is where he addressed the graduating women of that class with some very inspiring words of wisdom. Here's what he had to say to the ladies.
I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you. How many of you are sitting here now about to cross this stage and are thinking about all the promotions and titles you are going to get in your career? Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. I can tell you that my beautiful wife, Isabel, would be the first to say that her life truly started when she began living her vocation as a wife and as a mother.
As I said at our Sydney show on Thursday, I have one thing to say about that. Lol. Lol, 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 lol. How cute is it that he believes that to be true?
Well, for some women it is. He actually made a similar speech last year at Georgia Institute of Technology where he told graduates to get married and start a family. Since that happened, as I said, the internet's been broadly displeased. Some people have said that he should be sacked from his position on the football team. The wife of the Kansas Chiefs owner has come out and endorsed him and said, I too am most fulfilled by my role as a wife and a mother, and it is God's wish for me that I do this. Jessie, where do we even start? Should he lose his job?
Nah, he shouldn't lose his job. I think it's a dangerous path to go down that doesn't serve anyone, and I don't believe in religiously discriminating against people. He's a footballer, and he was asked to do a commencement speech at a Christian college. There were people in that audience I've seen on TikTok who have said, didn't applaud him, and I was deeply offended by what he said. But everyone has the right to believe what they want. What I'm interested in is the radicalization of certain Christian communities. And I think that some of the contempt that we throw at religion, even the way we talk about religious people, I don't think it's always helpful. So I have absolutely no problem with any religious adherence. You know, I went to a Catholic school, and a lot of what I learned about ethics and morals, I stand by today. But I would say that Christianity has a long overdue reckoning to be had with the subject of women. Christianity does not know what to do with women. And the reason I say that is because the Bible, which is the historical text, is a historical artifact. Like, there are things in it that you can, you know, draw from and say, this teaches us how to live. But the position of women in society when that was written is totally different to now. And so I do think that some of these ideas are harmful, and telling women what their place is, you know, not consistent with the world that we live in. And we saw that even with the P. Diddy story that we were talking about a moment ago, him saying, you know, I ask God for his mercy and grace. The thing that really gets people is the profound hypocrisy of a lot of these men. And I know that there was a story over the weekend about Donald Trump and Scott Morrison.
Julia Baird wrote this great piece that you're referring to for the Sydney Morning Herald, and it was titled, "Sorry for the Pylons, ScoMo and Trump, but by Jesus, you send women a warped view of religion." And she details this catch-up between former PM Scott Morrison and Donald Trump that happened last week. And Morrison posted a picture of the two of them grinning on social media. And Julia Baird wrote, "The photo of Trump and Morrison was a neat depiction of the brotherhood of Christian nationalism and a reminder of why so many people outside the church associate Christianity with conservatism and a pursuit of power. Even now, with men like Trump, whose alleged lovers tell courts he doesn't like wearing condoms when he cheats on his wives, but proudly strategically takes credit for the Supreme Court's dismantling of women's reproductive rights." She was basically saying that, you know, Trump somehow has become this emblem of Christian evangelicalism and the Christian right when he's
the least Christian.
Yeah, he doesn't espouse any Christian values.
That's why this isn't really about religion. It's about politics and power, right? Because just to be clear about Mr. Footballer and me saying lol to his assertion that motherhood and marriage is the central thing to a happy life for women, I don't mean because that is not true for any women. What I mean is, and as the Kansas Chiefs owner's wife, as you mentioned, Mia, she said it's not bigoted to affirm motherhood and celebrate family. And she's right. Of course, that's not bigoted. The bigoted part comes along when you seek to control women into believing that that's all they should or want to do. And that, even the word all is wrong in that context because, of course, like, you know, we're all sitting here as a mother, inverted commas. You know, I'm not going to have to say it out loud, but of course it's fulfilling and we love it, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's all true. It's not the point. The point is that this is about trying to control women, and it's about politics. And the whole reason why that speech is so controversial is because it's part of a very powerful and very effective culture war that's raging in the US at the moment that is going to be absolutely fundamental in this election. And that's because Trump has managed to position himself as the family values candidate, despite, as discussed,
Wild. Grabbing them by the pussy,
being sued by porn stars who he admits he had affairs with, as you've said, refusing to wear condoms, all of the things that he does. But somehow he has managed to position himself as a man who has his own Bible. You can buy a copy of the Trump Bible, and he's won over evangelicals. And the simple way that he's done that is by delivering them their biggest political win that they've had in generations by making abortion almost illegal in almost every state of the US. He has the receipts. He can stand there and say, I am the Christian president. It doesn't matter whether or not I'm one of the worst human beings in the world, because didn't I stack the Supreme Court for you, and didn't I get women's actions limited? It's not surprising that, as you point out, Jessie, Christianity's on a bit of a crash course with womanhood, because it was always going to happen that as women gained more power and freedom, they began questioning institutions that sought to not only control them, but also not to protect them or their children. So institutions that were not, for example, getting rid of paedophilic priests or were not, allowing them to have autonomy over their bodies. Of course, there was always going to be a point of tension there where they were like, they're thinking, I'm a woman of faith and I believe in much of this. And as Julia Baird beautifully puts in her piece, within churches is some of the most charitable and the most community-focused and the most do-gooding in the true sense of the term, not in a sort of sneered sense of the term that you'll see anywhere in the world. But you'll also see this clash of not knowing what to do with the fact that now women are not going to be ordered around by cute footballers and told what their purpose in life is. It's kind of sad.
I think that this is something a lot of women have been grappling with, even as a Catholic. I remember sitting in church, and there's no such thing as a female priest in Catholicism. Even, you look at the Pope, the hierarchy of the Catholic Church, it's totally patriarchal. And despite some female leaders within the church trying to push against that for a century at least, that just hasn't changed. And I know that there are some other religions who have managed to have more productive conversations and been more progressive when it comes to female inclusion. But it's funny what you say about the Trump thing too, because the comparison in Australia was, of course, Barnaby Joyce, who lectured us during the same-sex marriage debate.
And also campaigned against the decriminalisation of abortion.
Yes, because of
in New South Wales,
his religious principles, and then cheated on his wife. And so I think I was actually watching this Ashley Madison documentary on Netflix. That was going to be
I'm dying to watch that.
Recommendation this week. It is outstanding. But one of the stories follows a Christian blogger, and he and his wife would present as this idealistic couple who had all of these kids, and he loved his wife and she was a homemaker and really Christian. And it was quite wholesome. And then the Ashley Madison scandal broke, and guess whose email address was on Ashley Madison? And so all of that was revealed. There is a glee that comes with uncovering the hypocrisy of some of these people who are trying to wag their finger at us and tell us how to live our lives while they are being entirely immoral, Trump being the best example.
100%. And I think that in an ideal world, we can separate out the idea of, you said at the beginning of this, Jessie, that you think there's a sort of sneering tone about religion in some ways in popular discourse. And I feel like we need to make sure we're very clearly separating those things out, to respect people's faith, absolutely, but call out hypocrisy where it needs calling out. And the idea that Donald Trump is a man of God is laughable.
I also thought about Harrison Butker in the commencement speech that he gave. As you've always said, Hole, it was Benedictine College. It's a Catholic university. It's what it says on the box. They would have known, he was speaking to a like-minded group of people, obviously not everybody, but that's the message of Catholicism broadly, isn't it? It's no contraception, no abortion. That is the fundamental role of women.
Yes and no, though. What confused me the most about that speech was that it didn't seem relevant to people who had just completed a 4-year degree.
Yeah, that was confusing.
But here's a conservative Christian being invited to speak at a conservative Christian college, right? So he wasn't aiming for that speech to be relevant to everybody, and that's clearly why he was doing his job. And I agree that there's no way he should lose his job. He can't police what people think and believe. No. But it also revealed something very fundamental about that messaging, and they would have known it was going to get out. And I just can't wait till Taylor Swift has to sit next to his wife at the next football game and what they're going to have a chitty chat about.
Before we go, Holly Wainwright, you have the #1 podcast in the country this week. Thanks for bumping the other show that you do off the top of the charts. But congratulations, mid your new podcast, Conversations for Gen X Women Who Are Anything But Mid.
I know, it's amazing. My cup is full of the grown-up women saying, Thank you for mid. We love Julie Goodwin. She was on the first episode. Tomorrow's episode is very different. We always talk about a change of pace on Out Loud. Change of pace from episode 1 to episode 2. It's funny and it's about dating, midlife dating, and lots of Outlouders are going to hear themselves in this because they gave me lots of feedback.
Do you know the funniest thing, Outlouders, is that just weirdly coincidentally on the way back from Melbourne, I was sitting next to Julie Goodwin on the plane and we had a lovely chat about you, Hole. Outlouders, we will put a link to Mid. Follow it so that you don't miss an episode. There's also an Instagram account. There's also a newsletter. If you're a Gen X woman, you need to know about Mid.
I also sent it to my father. So there you
Oh,
go.
yeah,
I reckon men in middle age will get just as much out of it. They need a bit of love.
To be honest, that's true because the Julie episode is about mental health and it's a story that so many people have said to me, I am Julie Goodwin.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, make me a cake.
So true.
Thank you so much for listening to Australia's #1 news and pop culture show. This episode was produced by Emeline Gazilas. The assistant producer is Tahli Blackman, and we've had audio production by Leah Porges, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.
Bye. Shout out to any Mamamia subscribers listening. If you love the show and you want to support us, subscribing to Mamamia is the very best way to do so. There's a link in the episode description.